Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network, and presented in partnership with TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on May 18th, 2022, and is current through the Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode, Children of the Comet. So beware of spoilers. And if you are in one of the regions where any of the Star Trek shows have not yet aired and you are trying to stay spoiler-free, be sure to check the episode article on TrekCore for time codes for each of our stories tonight in order to avoid them. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a regular news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in a new golden age of Star Trek. There are 5 television shows in production, possibly more on the way, and enough merchandise to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me and I'll help you sort the real facts from lots of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone. And my guest this week is a frequent contributor to the Galactic Dads podcast. It's Eric Wagner. Eric, welcome to WeeklyTrek.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is my great pleasure. Well, Eric, I ask my guests this question every week. I want to know something that's got you feeling good about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
So I got 2 things keeping me moving at Warp 10. The first one, Strange New Worlds is off to just a beautiful start. I love that show, man. It is exactly what I was hoping it would be. It's fun to watch. You feel like when you're watching it and you're watching the cast, you feel like the cast is having fun acting the show out.
Yep.
And it's beautiful. I love it. I love the characters. The third.
Do you have a favorite character yet?
So far, my favorite character, I think, has to be La'an.
Yep.
Just because I can't wait to see what they do with her. I have no idea where that's going to go. And I think it's going to be a blast no matter what. But I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out the season 2 finale to Star Trek Picard.
Oh, yes.
Because that show, you know, it's funny because if you peruse Star Trek Twitter and the Star Trek community online, you get a lot of mixed signals on that show. And watching, you know, even season 2, even for me, and I really enjoyed the whole thing, but there were still parts where it was like, really, dude, what are we doing? Yeah. They brought it around so well. And I mean, you know, I'm sitting there a blubbery mess on my couch the whole time. It's like, man, I want to watch it again, but I kind of don't because I already know what's going to happen and I'm not going to get hit the same way, you know? Yeah, right. But if this is the Star Trek that we're getting in 2022, I'm all for it. Bring as much on as you possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, what a year, right? Star Trek Picard Season 2, Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1. Also a huge fan of Strange New Worlds Season 1. I'm torn right now in my favorite characters between Pike, Spock, and Hemmer. I think Hemmer's awesome. Now that we finally got the opportunity to meet number 1. I love number 1. And I love number 1. And yeah, and the Picard season 2 finale, obviously excellent, really, really good. And I too cannot watch it without just completely tearing up. There is this one track on the Picard season 2 soundtrack, which for some reason has sort of been the sort of soundtrack to my life for the last couple of weeks since it was released. But there's a track on the soundtrack, number 25. The track title is Where You Belong, which is, it picks up right at the moment in that very last scene with Q where, where Rios says that he's going to stay in the 21st century. And it runs all the way through Q saying, see you out there, and snapping his fingers, and then going back to the 25th century. And I probably have played that track maybe 100 times over the last 2 weeks, which, you know, has sort of sent me on a little bit of a roller coaster of an emotional journey. But hey, sometimes it's good to feel our feelings. But yeah, you know, those scenes, the music, the acting, John Delancey, incredible performance as Q in that last episode. I am 100% with you.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny you mentioned the music because I'll have various pieces of score from, you know, Star Trek or other things that I've watched or video games that I've played over the years, and they'll show up on a Spotify playlist, and I'll be in the middle of a conversation with somebody and you'll hear a track like that or, you know, something, and it'll just stop you and you just gotta you get real quiet. That's all you can do. It's amazing the effect that'll have. Credit to the people that score these TV shows and these movies and things. They do a heck of a job.
And the music for Strange New Worlds also, which Jeff Russo is the composer for Discovery and Picard, and Nami Melamad is the composer for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and she's doing an absolutely incredible job. I think the music for Strange New Worlds is really, really good.
Yeah, she's getting that original series feel while still getting the modern spin. That's got to be a tricky thing to accomplish, but so far it's been done really well.
Well, that kind of ties in pretty well to what I'm feeling good about this week. I've said I love the music for Star Trek Picard Season 2. I've said I love the music for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But the thing that I'm feeling good about this week is what is supposed to be the very last release from La La Land Records of Star Trek episodic score music from Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. It's been a long-running set of releases from La La Land of a ton of the music of Star Trek now. They've done 2 volumes of Next Generation music, 2 volumes of Deep Space Nine music, 2 volumes of Voyager music, 2 volumes of Enterprise music, and the one that just came out is called The Final Frontier Star Trek Collection, which is basically, there are 4 discs that covers the Next Generation, 1 for Deep Space Nine, 1 for Voyager, 1 for Enterprise, which is sort of, it's not everything left. There's still plenty of music that's not been released, even though there have been 2 4 CD sets for each of these shows. But it's like most of the coolest stuff that was left unreleased. So it's things like we've got more tracks from Way of the Warrior and Sacrifice of Angels from Deep Space Nine. We've got tracks from Counterpoint and from Flashback and from Deadlock from Voyager, and then Enterprise, the one everybody was waiting for, that final track from Azati Prime, the sort of big scene where Enterprise is nearly destroyed by the Xindi in Azati Prime and Archer gets captured by the Xindi. That's now on this soundtrack collection. It's a really fun set of music. If you like the music of 1990s Star Trek, and again, it's not to everybody's taste, right? There's no Sonic wallpaper thing, but this has been the music of basically my entire life. So I can't get enough of these. It's been terrific that La La Land Records have released so much of this music. I never thought we would get the amount that we have gotten. And yeah, I was listening to the Final Frontier collection just right before we hopped on. And so yeah, that's got me feeling good about Star Trek this week.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to have to look into that because some of those tracks just they just hook you in, and all you can do is stop and pay attention for sure.
All right. Well, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
Well, with Star Trek Picard Season 2 having wrapped up in the last couple of weeks, and all eyes turning towards Picard Season 3, new interviews about the show continue to appear online. Sir Patrick Stewart spoke to Vanity Fair about Season 2 and a little about what to expect in the 3rd and final season, which will see Picard reunite with his Next Generation colleagues. When asked about the underlying storyline to Season 2 related to Picard's mother, Sir Patrick had this to say, quote, "That was actually something that had been in my head for quite a long time. I knew there had been some kind of trauma. There had been hints and suggestions. So these might have only been in the writer's room, where people would talk about this kind of thing then. But to have the opportunity to have revealed the actual truth of what his childhood was like and how he had distorted the story in order to protect himself. I was brought up in a somewhat violent background too, and I know how important it is to find reasons why things are happening, and sometimes to take responsibility for why they're happening too." And on the final scenes with John Delancey's Q, Sir Patrick had this to say, quote, "The scenes with John Delancey were very intense, but because I think we both had great respect for one another and the work that we do, there was always a feeling of vulnerability about the scenes with Q. Sometimes Q was tiresome and sometimes he was threatening, and there was a feeling he could be violent. To have the relationship resolved as it was, which was very potent, I thought, and the work that John did was extraordinary. There was no question that it was still Q, and it was a Q we'd seen for over 30 years. But a changing man, and a man who had decided he could safely reveal himself and who he really was. I found that very emotional," And pivoting to season 3 and Stewart's TNG co-stars joining the show, he said, every single one of my leading colleagues from Next Generation will be in season 3 at different times. It was something which initially I had my doubt about. It would seem to me that it would be paying too much attention to the fan appreciations of what Next Generation had meant to them. I know how intense the social reconnections can be, but when we talked about it, when I talked to Akiva about it and my fellow producers and the other writers, I could see that it could be done without rewinding the clock. There was no reason for us to walk down memory lane in every scene, not at all. And the brilliant thing the writers did in season 3 is that they engaged the cast of the Next Generation. But that is as much as I'm allowed to say. And lastly, in response to a question about whether Sir Patrick could be talked into playing Picard again after season 3, he responded and said that, I think Picard has said his last sentence and given his last look at his colleagues. I think the way we close season 3 is perfect. It makes me emotional each time I think of it, but it's great. Eric, we've obviously already started talking about Star Trek Picard season 3, but tell me, what were some of the things you really liked about the show?
So what I like about Picard in general, both season 1 and season 2, is even with the introduction of new characters, Picard is a show that is paying service to the fans of the Next Generation. I really do feel that way. A lot of the things that you see, specifically in season 2, the use of Guinan throughout the story, John Delancey making his return, Whoopi Goldberg making hers, obviously, too. They were able to, to tie those nostalgic characters in. And I really feel like you get the people who watch the Next Generation, whether you were a kid or whether you've been through it a little bit more, they get a great deal more out of it. And the additional characters, Rafi and Agnes and Rios, while they were very valuable to the story and very, great characters on the screen, they definitely take more of a back seat in this show. While still being important. But this show, the focal point is definitely Picard. And I think what we're going to see in season 3 is we're going to see that focal point be that much more. It wouldn't shock me if the first 6 or 7 episodes of this show were almost one-on-one, like you have a Worf episode, then you have a LaForge episode, then you have a Beverly episode, and then maybe bring them all together toward the end of the series to kind of put a bow on everything. And I think what they're going to do on season 3 is I think we're going to see kind of an ultimate fan service, and you'll get some new viewers and you'll get some people that definitely appreciate it. But I really do believe that season 3 is going to be that, this is the toast to those of you who have seen it all and have loved us for the last 30 years.
Yeah, I think there is so much to like about season 2. And I actually think I might have said this on one of the episodes in the last couple of weeks, or I said this on my appearance on Infinite Diversity, but like the more I reflect on season 2 of Picard, the more I think it's really important that people binge it rather than sort of the experience that we had of it being released week to week. I think the show works so much better if you watch it straight through, or at least you watch it in chunks rather than you watch it week to week. Because there are episodes like episode 8, Mercy, which was my least favorite episode of the season. When I watched it, I watched 7, 8, and 9 together for the first time. And so I didn't need to dwell too much on 8 and the fact that it was not my favorite, because I watched 7 and then I watched 8 and then I watched 9 and I had a great time doing it. And I think as a show, it really will benefit from the fact that nobody's ever going to watch it week to week again, right? You're only ever, anytime you watch the show now, you're going to watch it. You watch 2 or 3 at a time, and then you'll come back to it the next day or whenever you're next in the mood watching Star Trek, and you'll keep carrying on and watching it. And so I think I think season 2 of Picard, people's opinions of it are going to improve over time. My opinion is already quite high about it. And yeah, I really love the way that this season they leaned into that sort of Next Generation kind of more intensive than just saying callback, right? Like integrating into the season characters like Q and Guinan, and then yes, having a Wesley callback at the end, which was a lot of fun.
Yes,
as a build-up for this kind of orgy of Star Trek nostalgia in season 3, which sign me up for that particular orgy. I'm all about it. And everything that we have to look forward to. I mean, it's really interesting the way Sir Patrick says, I think Picard has said his last sentence and given his last look at his colleagues. To me, I kind of come away from that with the sense that, like, yeah, I think maybe this might be, Picard might finally punch his calling card at the end of season 3 and the character will die. What do you think, though? Do you think this ends with Picard dying?
Yes, I've always thought that this series would end with Picard's passing. It makes the most sense. You'll button it up very nicely. I think bringing the next generation characters aboard is only going to cement that further. I do believe that Sir Patrick will have played his last time as Picard when this show ends. How about you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because it just sort of feels like he sort of definitively wants to bring this to a close, right? I mean, and then there's obviously the thing about he's 81 now, so of course he's not going to play Picard again after having slogged through 3 seasons of doing this. But I've been listening a little bit to the Shuttlepod show, which is Dominic Keating and Connor Trinneer's YouTube podcast about Star Trek Enterprise. And Connor, who played Trip Tucker, was talking about how, like, one of his favorite things about Tucker's arc over the course of the series is that he's one of the few actors who got a character arc that ended. Now, granted, it's a super controversial end and a bunch of people hate it, right? The fact that Trip dies in the last episode of Enterprise. But from the actor's perspective, there's got to be a certain level of satisfaction about that, right? You sort of took this character's story from the beginning where you picked it up all the way through to the end. And theoretically, sort of some kind of retconning of that death notwithstanding, like, that is the end of the character. And Connor kind of played it all the way through to the end. And I wonder if the same ends up being true for Sir Patrick Stewart too, right? This sort of sense of really bringing a definitive closure to the character. And I don't think that looks like retirement, right? Like, that probably does look like the character, dying as that definitive end, or moving on in some way to another form, or, hopefully, I mean, he's already moved on to an android. Where is there left to go? But yeah, I think there's something really interesting there. And with this sort of notion of it being this big grand finale, it does just kind of feel like that's maybe where it's building to. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a logical conclusion, but you never know. Fair point. I hear the Q continuum has an opening. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, in addition to Sir Patrick Stewart, Picard series regular Jerry Ryan, who plays 7 of 9, and Michelle Hurd, who plays Raffi, have also been talking about the show and its upcoming 3rd season. When asked about the state of the 7 and Raffi relationship in season 3, Jerry Ryan said, quote, "I think at the very basic level, they'll always kind of be home for each other. Regardless of what paths life takes them on, they will always sort of just be home. A safe space and a comfortable, trusted space. There's so much respect there, there's so much love there, and so much trust." And on what it was like to work on season 3, especially alongside such famous Star Trek luminaries, Michelle Hurd said, quote, "It's really delicious, and there are more twists and turns. Maybe fans are anticipating some twists and turns, but there's a bunch of them there. The players who are coming to play with us, each time somebody walked on set, it was like a historic moment. Everybody would come onto the soundstage, and we were just so excited to welcome back these individuals, and the stories that Jerry and I got to explore are incredibly exciting and action-packed and emotional. I think it's going to give you guys a lot. It's not even like Easter eggs. We're just going to be putting some stuff straight out. It's in your face. I think you guys will be as giddy as we were shooting it." Well, Eric, I got to ask, like, what do you think she means by that, right? I mean, obviously there's the one sense where, we know the Next Generation cast are returning, but do you think there is other stuff that's maybe being alluded to there? I'm sure there is. There always is. I mean, nobody would have predicted that Will Wheaton was going to show up as Wesley in the last episode of Picard in season 2 either. Right. I'm sure there's going to be some things that are going to come out that we're not going to expect or we're not going to be ready for. I love it. I can't wait to see what comes around. There are, I love Jerry Ryan. I love 7 of 9 as a character. I love Raffi as a character. I am excited to see where their relationship goes. Honestly, even if it doesn't really go anywhere, the way they interacted in season 2 was very good, and it wasn't overplayed. And even if it's just like that in season 3, I think it would be great. I'm very interested to see, a very matter-of-fact Raffi, interacting with a Riker or a Worf. Yep.
And you never know what the past, however many years has done to change Worf. I guess canonically in the novels, if I'm not mistaken, he is captain of the Enterprise now.
Yep.
So that could be interesting. We might run into a situation where Rafi ends up on the Enterprise, maybe has to serve a short time on there, and you get to see their interaction. You never know. But that's the beautiful thing about it, is the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of what's in this season. And I got a few reasons for thinking that. One, so we know they shot on the sets that they built in season 2 for the USS Stargazer, right? The ship that was introduced as the Stargazer, it's Rios's ship, and it's that, and it's the sets associated with it. But Terry Matalas has said they're using the same sets, but the ship is not the Stargazer. It's a different ship. Could it be the Enterprise? I think it makes sense for it to be the Enterprise, right? But that's not been said. And there's been, Doug Drexler did a sort of a video walkthrough of a bunch of the LCARs on the Stargazer set. And in the video, there is sort of strategically blurred out sections of it, which are sort of these long, thin rectangles. And I think there's another ship hiding beneath that blurred out section, that it's not even that the whatever ship they're on is the same Sagan class as the Stargazer, that they're using the same bridge, but the ship itself is completely different. So if it's the Enterprise, it's almost certainly not the Enterprise E, right? Unless it's been heavily refit in the last 20 years. So number one, I think there's at least a new ship coming in it, and maybe it's the Enterprise. Number two, Terry Matalas has also said, he was asked, will there be any cameos from Deep Space Nine and Voyager characters? To which he responded with a cryptic kind of gif that, was sort of like one of those like, maybe, type things, right? Which to me, I don't think you say maybe if the answer is no, because then people get their hopes up. And if there's absolutely nothing along those lines, you sort of led people down the garden path. And I think in that situation where that would not happen, he just would not have responded to that tweet, right? People are tweeting him questions all the time. It's a very intentional choice to respond to something like that and kind of, give some kind of cryptic response. The other interesting thing too is this notion that Terry's also said that there'll be a bit of a time jump between 2 and 3. There was about a year between 1 and 2. There's going to be about another year between 2 and 3. So more time will have passed, more things will have changed, and it'll be really interesting to see what those are. But this kind of feels in some ways like it's not just a capper on Picard, it's a capper on the Next Generation, and maybe it's a capper on that whole kind of era of storytelling as the franchise as a whole kind of looks to do new and interesting things. So yeah, really interesting kind of space that we're in right now, and seems like lots of exciting things to come. I mean, how convincing do you find that, Eric, around? I mean, would you like to see Deep Space Nine and Voyager characters on this show as well?
Oh, I have no doubt in my mind, Alex, that we're going to see some cameos from other characters from the other shows.
Yeah.
And I love it. If we don't see an Admiral Janeway, I'll be shocked.
It's been teased, right? Like, the season 2 finale, the explicit mention of Janeway, and she's doing stuff for the franchise.
Yes, she is. And as soon as Seven said that, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so Janeway is going to show up, but we don't know when. What I would love to see, and I think with Worf being on the show for this season, I think it's a perfect opening. I feel like in the cameos and everything, I feel like Deep Space Nine doesn't get the love.
It does not.
And
yeah.
And that's such a shame, because it is such a great show. And I think we're gonna see a little bit of that love spread out to some of the Deep Space Nine characters. I don't necessarily know what that looks like. Obviously the only people who do are the people who filmed it. But who would you like if you had your choice, like for a Deep Space Nine character to make a cameo or to show up and participate? Who would you pick?
For me, I think I pick O'Brien, because there's that strong Next Generation connection as well, right? Like he's just as much a TNG character as a Deep Space Nine character. And I'd love to see Colin Meaney, do another scene with Sir Patrick Stewart. I think that'd be awesome.
That's a great point. And I could definitely see that too.
Who would you pick?
I would either pick Chief O'Brien, or I would pick Jake Sisko.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a good one. The other one, too, I was thinking about is what if they visit Deep Space Nine and Kira's still in command?
Yeah, that's a possibility. They could go a few different directions. Obviously, in the books, by this time, Ezri is not only a captain, but she's probably pretty well established. So, you might run into her ship as far as that goes. Unfortunately, as much as I think we would all love to, I know Nog is not a option, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But Quark could be. Quark could show up. They mentioned him in season 1, so it would be a fun tie back. And he could even have some fun interactions with Seven, and Seven might just punch him in the face for old time's sake. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing who else they bring in. I think they'd be crazy not to have some good cameos. I'll bet my hat that Janeway shows up within the first episode or 2 of season 3, and who knows who else. And with what they're doing with Prodigy, with everything that's going on with Janeway and Prodigy, they might even do a little bit of a I don't want to say a crossover, but you might see something that happens in Prodigy affect something that happens in Picard.
That would be super exciting if they did something like that.
Yeah, like let's say they find Chakotay. Chakotay could theoretically show up in Picard.
Yep, absolutely. Sure, Robert Beltran would say yes to that.
He'd be crazy not to.
He sure would be. Well, Star Trek licensee Factory Entertainment have revealed 2 more in their line of scaled prop replicas, which allow you to collect smaller versions of iconic Star Trek props for a fraction of the space and cost. The company previously announced the release of a scaled version of the Klingon Batleth and the Vulcan Leopard, and this week announced the release of phaser rifles from the original series and the Next Generation. Each of the pieces are about 6 to 8 inches long. They're highly detailed replicas and come complete with their own display stand. The Batleth and the Lurper retail for $35, and the 2 phaser rifles are available for $60 each. All 4 scale prop replicas are shipping now. I just got my shipping notice for all 4 of them the other day. So you can get started on a cool new collection of Star Trek props today if you want to. Eric, do any of these catch your eye? And if Factory Entertainment came to you and said, Eric, which Star Trek prop should we make next as a scale prop replica, which would you pick?
Well, I already ordered a Batleth, so
oh, very nice.
Well, so I've always loved the Klingon weapons. I have a replica of the ceremonial knife. The name's escaping me. The one that the blades shoot out the side too. Thank you, the Daktag. I have a Daktag, and I've always said I wanted a full-size Batleth, but I just couldn't bring myself to pull the trigger on the money.
Yeah.
Wife and kids will do that to you sometimes.
Sure. It's a big prop.
Yes, it is. But the mini one, yeah, I went ahead and ordered that when I was looking through that this morning. These are super neat. For people who like the miniatures, like the Eagle Moss ships and stuff like that. This is right up the same alley to me.
Yeah, totally.
And I like that. If you were to ask me what I would like to see as an additional replica, I'd love to see a replica of one of the Ferengi energy whips from the first season of Next Generation. I always thought that was a neat weapon. It was a cool idea that nobody else was doing. And I think that would be, I think that'd be a lot of fun if they could find a way to do that where it didn't look ridiculous. What about you?
Oh, God, I got to come up with one as good as the Ferengi energy whip now. Let's see. Oh, I would really like the Romulan phaser rifle from TNG, the sort of boxy one.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That was a really neat kind of prop. It was very very Romulan. So yeah, I think I would pick that one. Oh, or an Anbu Jitsu like staff, that they fight with in the Icarus Factor.
That would be cool. That would be really cool.
But yeah, these are cool. I'm excited for them to do more. I've handled the phaser rifles, and they're very good, highly detailed, especially the TNG phaser rifle. It's a really great prop replica. So yeah, this is perfect for folks like you and me, Eric, who don't have the space to display like Batleths and phaser rifles, but who would like something on our shelves. And I'm looking forward to more of these from from factory.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I see something. I'm looking at the article where they're showing them, and they brought up the Romulan disruptor rifle, but another one that I didn't think about was the Jem'Hadar knife.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be a cool one as well.
Love that idea. That's very cool too. And lastly this week, while excitement is growing for the return of Playmates toys to Star Trek and the release of the first wave of action figures this summer, another Star Trek figure licensee, that's Super 7, has released a new set of Star Trek action figures that are actually gaining some attention. The company, which previously released 3.5-inch versions of a set of iconic TNG characters, which included Picard, Data, Guinan, and Wesley, are adding to their TNG line with a new round of releases. The latest figures added to the line include Riker, LaForge, Crusher, Troy, complete your big 7 of main characters from TNG. It also includes Q in Judge's robes from Encounter at Farpoint. But perhaps most excitingly, the last figure in this line of releases is Armus from the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Skin of Evil. Yes, the sentient oil slick that was responsible for the death of Tasha Yar can now be in your home as an action figure that you can purchase. And if you can believe it, and I'm sure you can, this is the first officially licensed Armus merchandise that has come to market. So for all you Skin of Evil stans, and I know you're out there, this is your time to shine. The figures are now on sale and shipping now, and retailer listings seem to indicate that a third wave of Elementary Dear Data themed figures is coming this fall. Eric, are you a fan of Star Trek action figures? And did any of these Super 7 figures catch your eye?
I am a fan of action figures in general, and I'm definitely a fan of the Star Trek ones. I love this kind of callback, this everything old can be new again. So my parents, I'm in my 30s. I've got 2 young children of my own, but my parents saved all of my stuff. And they still had a lot of my Star Trek action figures from when I was a kid. So my kids play with them now from time to time, which is always entertaining to me. But so anytime I see this, I get the nostalgia hit. The Armus figure, every time I hear anything about Armus now, it just immediately takes me to that scene in Lower Decks where Mariner's like, oh, what are we going to prank call Armus? And it just kills me. And when I was a kid, when Skin of Evil came out and I saw it, I was like, okay, this episode's really, really weird. Now, it takes on a different meaning when you're older and you understand it a little more. But I think it's awesome that Armus is, as silly as this looks, it's just a black blob of goo with legs, basically. Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome that the character is getting a little bit of a callback, a little bit of a I don't know if we want to call it if he's getting his due or what, but it's fun to see Armus come out of the proverbial goo and get a little bit of attention, because there's plenty of villains and plenty of one-off characters in Star Trek that you never hear from again. So it's always kind of fun when you see one come back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a huge fan of any time they lean into something a little weird or a little new when it comes to Star Trek merchandising, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many Picard figures, there's so many Data figures, there's so many Kirks and Spocks, and now there's an Armus, right? Playmates didn't make an Armus. Who would think to possibly make an Armus at any point in history? Well, Super 7 did, and they've made one and you can buy it. And boy, did I buy it. I haven't received it yet, but I definitely got myself one of these just because, like, it's so dumb, but because it's really dumb, it's also really cool. And so,
right. Like, exactly.
Yeah, like, I want them to do more of this stuff, right? More funky, esoteric characters that aren't just the same old characters in a different packaging than we've seen before. So a huge credit to Super 7, I think, for doing this. I'm also really excited for these Elementary Dear Data figures that have showed up in the retailer listings. No pictures of them yet, but it's Data, LaForge, Picard, and Worf in their sort of Victorian attire, because we didn't really get that in the Playmates figures either. They didn't make the Sherlock Holmes versions of any of the characters, so that'll be exciting. And hey, it'd be terrific if they also did a Moriarty, right, or a Pulaski Elementary Dear Data figure. That would also, like, if you really want to go totally off the wall, that's where I would want to go. And I'd buy a Moriarty action figure in a New York minute. Would I buy?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, this is really cool and really fun. I'm hoping that it gets enough buzz that, like, other licensees will do more of this kind of things, and Playmates will do more of this kind of thing, right? When their first wave of releases, which we talked about a few months ago, they played it safe. Picard and Data and Riker and Kirk and Spock and Khan, right? That's playing it safe. Okay, you play safe for wave number 1. Super 7 played it safe for wave number 1. But with wave number 2, maybe let's try something a little interesting. Maybe let's try something a little different. So yeah, I'm hoping this serves as an inspiration for more folks to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hope that they continue to be creative with their choices. There's like we were just saying, there's a lot of options out there. With the elementary Dear Data ones, it'd be awesome. I'd love to see the Western Worf and Alexander at some point. Do you have any that come to mind that you think it'd be fun to be an action figure for them?
I would love right now, for like thinking about the Playmates, I really want them to make characters from the new shows. That's what I really want.
Yes.
But in terms of like old characters that never kind of got a release, I'd love the female changeling, right? Or Kai Wynn. We never got a Kai Wynn figure. That'd be cool.
True.
I'd also love a Hirogen action figure, right? Like, wouldn't that be cool?
That would be.
So like some of that stuff, right? Things we've not seen before, but that would be, or actually, no, here you go. I want a Future Guy action figure. That's what I want.
There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah. So plenty of options for folks to choose from of things that haven't been done yet. All right. Well, we've talked about the facts, and now let's speculate on what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek.
You make some very good points, Captain. But it's still all speculation and theory.
So each week, my guest and I give you a wish or theory we're nurturing about any of the shows or the future of the franchise. So Eric, let's hear your theory or wish for this week.
All right. Well, so there have been a lot of theories and stuff swimming around my head. I have a theory that in Strange New Worlds, we're going to see Sam Kirk die this season. It's not that I want that to happen. I just really do think it's going to, as far as a wish goes, one wish that I would have is with Strange New Worlds. I'm going to stick with that because it's the immediate property.
Yeah, please.
With Strange New Worlds, my wish for that show is keep the boat going the way you're going. They're doing such a good job of developing characters. We're 2 episodes in, and I already love everybody on the crew.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen in every show.
Sure.
And they've done such a good job blending the crew together. They've done such a good job with putting a good deep story in both episodes, without making anything quote unquote preachy or making anything, anything that anybody really should complain about.
Yep.
You're always going to have people complain, but
sure.
It's just, I hope that they keep that course and they don't try to get too wild with it. I think if they do that and they just stay the course on that show's going to be a huge hit. It's going to be the flagship series as soon as a couple of these other ones are done, if not before.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to. I will say I've talked about this in a previous episode. I've seen the first 5 episodes at this point, and the next 3 are just as good as the first 2, and that's half of season 1 at that point. And yeah, it's very much in the same mold as the first 2 episodes we've watched, right? Episodic stories with just sort of a little bit of a character through line across the episodes, but nothing approaching the level of serialization of Discovery or Picard. It's more just sort of like, some of those thematic character beats that continue to show up as we learn a little bit more about each of the characters. Each of the subsequent episodes kind of has a bit of this week, it's a X character episode for the A story and an X character episode for the B story type thing, same as episode 1 and 2 had. And so if they continue on that path for the remaining 5 episodes of season 1, it's going to be one of the strongest first seasons of Star Trek. Certainly, I think probably the strongest live action series of Star Trek since Star Trek season 1, going all the way back to 1966. I really feel that way already, having seen
that's awesome.
Half of it. That's really the potential here. But yeah, so I think they kind of know the show they're making. It feels very comfortable, and I do not get the sense by episode 5 that like the train's starting to come off the tracks or anything like that. It is firing on all cylinders, and I can't wait to see more of them personally.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I've only seen the first 2, but like I said, I love the show so far, and I'm happy to hear that it keeps on that way. I think we're due for an episodic Star Trek. You mentioned something earlier about binging Picard and how it has a different effect. I agree with you on that with Picard. I also think that Discovery benefits from that too, significantly. I feel like doing the week-to-week thing, while Strange New Worlds, I'm happy I watch it every week, and then I'm excited to go back to it after a week's gone by. There were plenty of times in Discovery and Picard where you just you get to the end of the episode, but like, really, come on, man. And and then you just get frustrated until the next week. So yeah, I think we've got a good episodic show here, and I wish it stays that way and it stays solid.
All right, let me tell you my wish, which is also Strange New Worlds wish. So we're staying on the Strange New Worlds theme for this week's episode. My wish is that I want to see new parts of the Enterprise that we never saw in the original series, right? I mean, obviously, the ship looks very different from the way it did in the original Star Trek, even though it's the same ship. And, we'll just take all of that as read. It's the same ship. It's just a different visual interpretation. But obviously in the original series, we only got the opportunity to see a certain number of rooms and a certain number of sets, right? The bridge, engineering, sick bay, the corridors, the transporter room, captain's quarters, science lab, and Jeffrey's tube. And I've pretty much just given you the whole layout of the TOS sets as they were on the Desilu Studios of 1966.
Yep.
Strange New Worlds has shown us many of those same locations as like the sort of Strange New Worlds version of it. We've seen the bridge, we've seen engineering, we've seen quarters, we've seen corridors, we've seen sick bay, and we've gotten a new set, right? You've got the briefing room too. Sorry, there's also the briefing room, which also doubles as like the mess hall. And in Strange New Worlds, we've gotten now this sort of new location, which is the mess hall / bar, right? Which is sort of their version of 10 forward at the front of the ship. But I'm looking forward to Strange New Worlds going further and showing us more locations on the Enterprise, right? I want to see more science labs, and I want to see, more engineering sections, but different from what we've seen in the original, right? Like different parts of the ship. I'd love to go up in a nacelle, right? Let's see what the inside of those great TOS-y nacelles look like. Let's go to deflector control. Let's go to, right? I want to go into new parts of the ship, and I want to see more of the Enterprise. I'd love to see the bowling alley, right? Famously, the bowling alley, which is on the Matt Jeffries schematics for the TOS Enterprise. Screw it. Let's have an actual bowling alley on the Strange New Worlds Enterprise, and let's have a scene set there, because I just think that would be cool. They have a much higher budget than they had in 66, and we love the Enterprise, and I would like to see more of the Enterprise. So yeah, my wish is, and they kind of talked a little about this in interviews where the cast have been like, oh, it's always a thrill to get on set and be like, what new kind of room did they build today? And presumably a lot of those rooms are going to be Enterprise rooms. So I think my wish is going to be fulfilled, and I'm very much looking forward to it, because the Enterprise is an iconic ship and I want to see more of her. So yeah, more locations on the Enterprise in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Eric, what do you think about that?
I am all for it. Absolutely. Show me the bowling alley.
Yeah. Show me the bowling alley and the swimming pool.
Yes. I think this is the cast, and this is the setting of a show that could get away with doing something like that without it seeming too cheesy.
Oh, 100%. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. Do you have a theory or a wish for Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, or Prodigy that you'd like to share? Tweet them to me at WeeklyTrek, or email them to me at weeklytrek@thetricordertransmissions.com, and I might feature your theory in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Trek. Thank you so much to my guest, Eric Wagner, for joining me today. Eric, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
Well, like you had mentioned before, and thank you for that, you can find me on the Galactic Dads podcast. You can find us on social media at Galactic Dads anywhere you choose to. You can also find me on Twitter at Laser83Eric. And I'll talk and respond to about anything and everything. So I talk a lot of Star Trek, a lot of video games, any kind of nerd stuff that seems like fun. I'm down to talk about it anytime.
And Eric, that is my kind of Twitter account. And you can find this show on Twitter at WeeklyTrek and me at Alexander T. Perry. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And please check out some of the other great shows on the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you like our shows, please also consider becoming a Patreon of Tricorder, which you can find at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And lastly, if you're looking for Star Trek news on the internet, I hope you will turn to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Eric. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper.